Why has it got a bungalow window in there? Well, hello there. Welcome along to another Jenny video, and we're going to be looking at a particular item that I picked up a little while back now. Got this as a Christmas present. Gosh, how time flies. But this is something there's been a lot of stuff talked about online. Good stuff, bad stuff. But it's something a little bit different. So without further ado, let's take a closer look. What I've got here is one of the new Oxford Rail 6-wheel type AA1 brake fans, and if I find the end code there, we've got a little bit of detail there. Code OR76TOA001, and this is GWR towed brake van, 6-wheel planked early type with the name Swindon. This is the AA1 brake van, as I said before. Now, this was the only 6-wheel brake van that the Great Western Railway produced. They started building these in 1900. So the main reason that I've gone for this particular livery is because I wanted to try and find a brake van suitable for the pre-grouping period. And as far as I can ascertain, this is the wagon from Oxford Rail, which is suitable for that period. But it's very hard to tell. The Great Western Railway was the only pre-grouping company that kind of persisted. There's not really that demarcation that there is with other pre-grouping railway companies when they became grouped and became the other members of the Big Four. We'll open this up. It's a model that was kind of keenly anticipated, but I've seen a lot of criticism levelled at it, some of which I think is a little bit unfair. Oxford Rail have brought models to the market at a very, very favourable price, and this particular item I think was about £11, something like that. So compared to the Bachmann models, they're so much less expensive, and in some respects that does give them a little bit of a free pass for a few minor niggles. I think the big area that came in for criticism on these has been some of the details surrounding the brakes around the middle axle. I've seen it said that some people have claimed that they've just really cut and pasted the CAD image to create that third axle, and that there's a lot of aspects on this that is misrepresented, possibly from having scanned a different type of brake van that's at the Didcot Railway Centre. Now, I'm not entirely sure how much of that is fair to level against it. There are no surviving 6-wheel brakes, so there isn't a real one to really compare to. They were quite a long-lasting van, built from 1900, and lasted right through into, well, I think the last of them was withdrawn in the early 1960s, although, as I said before, none passed through to preservation. To my eyes, it's a pretty well realised model. We've got some quite fine detail in terms of the struts to hold the footboards, and they're pretty robust, but they do look fairly fine details. We've also got separately applied handrails on the side, and it's really nicely done. And for a model that costs this little in this day and age, it's actually really, really nice. The actual colour of the side planking, well, the Great Western Railway had it's kind of a greeny grey, and this, to me, to my eye, has been fairly faithfully represented on this model. One potential criticism that draws my eye is that the couplings, whilst they are in NEM pockets, but they are cranked, and I can see why they might have done this to be able to get these brake hangers all in place, which is a lovely factory applied detail that you don't tend to see much from other manufacturers, but certainly on this it's well realised. But it does mean that if you want to replace these couplings with KDs, you might have to be very careful about the way you do it. They do go into pockets, which does mean that if you can find a fairly standard coupling adapter, then you can use the existing pockets. But it's strange to my eye that these have been moulded in this black, when actually they would have probably looked a lot better moulded in this grey-green body colour and would have been a little bit less obtrusive. We've got metal buffer heads, finely turned. They're actually very, very fine moulding. They're not sprung, but again, we all know by now my stance on these matters. The underframe detail really is an area that Oxford Rail are doing particularly well on, in my view, and that is exquisite to see all of this detail with the brakes all faithfully produced. Now, on the back is something that this is a criticism that is fairly placed. Why has it got a bungalow window in there, you may ask? The real ones would have had like a solid wooden hatch, and the reason for that was that the guard from the inside could open it up for changing lamps, because contrary to what people might think, these weren't turned at the end of each run when they got to the end of the line. Yes, it had a veranda at one end, but that veranda was never exclusively at the back of the train, so these could run veranda facing forwards towards the train, and that would mean that the guard would need a fairly ready way to be able to change lamps, and that was done through a hatch in the middle. After these wagons passed through into departmental service, of all diagrams, they have sometimes received modifications. And on the one that's at the Didcot Railway Centre, its particular modification was that in departmental use, the hatch was changed for a window, presumably because it was used as a workshop, and that was to let extra light in. Unfortunately, Oxford Rail have managed to faithfully recreate that detail, and it really does beg a belief as to how they didn't pick up on that. The Chinese factory has presumably just taken the scans or the CADs and faithfully reproduced what's there, so we can't really lay any blame at the Chinese factory that's producing this. This is purely the design team. That said, it's something that I have seen people do with a little bit of work. They've managed to faithfully replicate the wooden hatch on there, so it's not a difficult modification if you want to give it a go. The tempo printing is reasonably sharp, although the G and the W letters look like they may have benefited by a second passing with the tempo printer, and it's something that Oxford Rail have on occasion, certainly with the red private owner wagons. They've struggled a bit to get good coverage with the white lettering, and you often find a little bit of a bleed through from underneath. It's not as bad on this wagon as I have seen on some of the private owner wagons, but that said, it does look as though it would have benefited with a little bit more white going on there, and maybe that's something that in the future Oxford Rail could look at addressing. We've got this lovely, almost copper plate 24-ton weight on there, and the 6 wheels braked on every wheel, and the little bit extra weight there over the 20-ton brake vans meant that these were a popular choice for some of the very heavy coal wagon trains for that extra braking force. We've also got these steps are very, very fine. I'm looking there, and these are a particularly good plus point for me. They actually look like they could be very easily damaged, so I don't really want to prod them too much, but certainly they look really good. The way that this stands out from the later models, later as in the later period models, is the planking. When built, they were planked all the way down to the sole bars, but later on, due to body rot, things like that, they were plated at the bottom. So the easier way to tell apart an early wagon from a later wagon is the lack of plating on the bottom, and I'm hoping that this makes this wagon in this livery suitable for pre-1923 usage. Inside the veranda, we've got a very, very fine hand brake on there, and this was something that actually in later years made these wagons unpopular with the unions that represented some of the rail workers, because unlike the Midland Railway designed vans, where the handbrake handle was inside the cabin, the guard would have to go out in all weathers to be able to put on the handbrake, and that was something that the union said was causing unnecessary hardship in certain weathers to the crew. That said, some of the guards actually preferred these wagons because of the slightly more roomier nature of the cabins. We've also got on the roof, we've got the stovepipe, and I do like this detail where it's got this sort of metal collar on it, which is probably something that when you had the stove going inside and it was roaring, you didn't want the stovepipe right next to your wooden roof because it would set fire to it. So that's a nice touch, which isn't necessarily modelled quite so nicely on some of the other wagons. The white applied to the roof has got this sort of slightly satin look to it, and I do like that. It looks more realistic to me than some of the brilliant white roofs that we've come to see from some of the other manufacturers. Overall, I would say We can't get away from the detraction of the bungalow window on the back, but to most people's eyes, if it hadn't have been pointed out, they probably wouldn't have noticed. So it's not a game changer for me. It's nice to see Oxford Rail introducing types of wagons which we've never seen from any of the other manufacturers. And I think that certainly if it's able to represent the pre-grouping period, this particular wagon is going to become a handy addition to an awful lot of model railways, and with that low price we can overlook some of the shortcomings. Well, I hope that was really informative to you. Don't forget to like this video, share it too, and also subscribe to the channel to be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, you take very good care of yourself. I'm Jenny Kirk. Thanks again for watching this video. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.